Welcome back to this edition of The Golden Rule. And I want to encourage you, if you didn't see last week's, make it a point to look at it because it lays a foundation for what I want to say today. On last week's program, I shared how God has allowed me to impact this community in different ways. And I made mention of the fact that none of it was by my own initiative. Well, now I want to do something kind of bold, kind of out of the box, kind of different, but I want to invite you to join me and be a part of the next phase because God has given me yet another vision on how to impact this community. And it all began when I read a book entitled In His Steps. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Christian literature, there are two fiction books, Christian fiction books, that were written years ago. The one is Pilgrim's Progress, which was written years ago, and that's the #1 best-selling Christian fiction book of all time. The second is a book called In His Steps, the second most popular Christian book of all time. It was written in 1896, and it is the book from which the expression WWJD has come. Some of you may have been around when they had the WWJD bracelets. What would Jesus do? And that's the basis of this particular book. Well, I thought to myself, this was years ago that I read the book, and I thought, I would like to see that somehow put in play form, dramatic form, and produced in a community. And so 4 years ago, 2019, I thought, well, where do you start? And so I got out a pad and I started reading the book and transferring it into a script form. I have some background in theater, in drama. I have some experience in that area, so I kind of know how it works. And so I got about 6 pages into it, and a thought came to my head, am I reinventing the wheel? So I called the publisher, and I said, is this perhaps available in drama form? And they said, it's not only available, but there's only one authorized version. Nobody else can write another one. Well, saved me a bunch of writing. And there's also a script that was already pre-prepared. And so I knew I was going to do this. So in January of 2019, I ordered the script. And it's been sitting in a box in my office for 4 years. And it's so important to wait on God's timing because, God says, come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. Yoke up with me. Let's do this thing together. And when we do things together with God, there's no sweat. There's no uptight. Ooh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? I am perfectly at ease with this whole thing. I've never directed a play. I've never produced a play. I've never come up with backdrops and costumings and makeup. I don't know how to do any of that stuff, but I know it can be done. And I know there are people in Detroit Lakes that can help me. And so I'm just saying, okay, God, I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to let folks know what we're going to do. So the play In His Steps, the dramatic production, will appear, God willing, if everything goes on schedule, on April 6th, 2024. You say, oh, that's a year away. Exactly. It's a year away, and there's a lot of preparation required to put on a decent play, and this thing is going to be top drawer. It's going to be done with excellence. Everything about it is going to be done with excellence. And so we need lots of time to do it with excellence. So how do I go about doing this? I need a cast. I need people who are willing to play the parts. We need 15 men and 7 women. They're all adult parts. There are no children role in this particular play, nor is it a musical. So I don't have to worry about music. There is one role where a woman does some singing, and it's church hymn type singing. So, it's no big musical production. It's strictly a dramatic play. And so, how do I find 22 actors? Well, number one thing that's really exciting is you don't have to have any experience whatsoever to be an actor. And the reason I know that is because last winter I was in the play at the Holmes Theater entitled The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, and it was mostly kids in the play. And the one gal that stole the house was a young teenage girl, 12, 13, 14, I'm not sure how old she was, but she had the whole audience in tears because she did such a good job. And so anybody can be taught to act. That's not a problem. All you have to do is have the desire. I want to use my abilities to do something significant for God. And that's what this whole thing is all about. We're not just going to have 22 people who want to be some hotshot, headliner on a stage. No, I want 22 people who have a heart for God and who want to give their lives for a season. They'll be, 2 months before this thing happens, it's going to be some relatively intense rehearsal type schedules. But you've got a whole year to learn the script. So that's another reason why I'm glad we've got advanced timing. So we're going to have people, and maybe you're one of those people. And if you're not, maybe as you're listening to me, you're thinking about somebody else that you know or a relative in your family, and you say, oh boy, so-and-so ought to hear about this. Tell them. Tell them. Raina's going to put my phone number on the screen, and they can call me, and we'll just explain what's involved. And they can get a copy of the script, read through it, see if it's something that they want to be a part of, if it fits with their DNA, and all that sort of thing. So then, the next thing I'm going to need is a set designer. Set designer. We're going to have 4 different sets. There's going to be a kitchen scene, there's going to be a living room scene, there's going to be a church scene, and there's going to be a tent scene. We're going to need backdrops for all of that, and we're going to need props, and we're going to need costumes, and we're going to need a whole bunch of stuff. And I believe there's somebody watching me right now that likes to sew. And you're creative at sewing, and you're good at sewing, but you've got nothing to sew and nobody to sew for. Hello? We need some period clothing from 1890s for women and for men. Oh, and we need hats, because hats were in back then, and they're some of the weirdest hats you've ever seen. I was looking online. The stuff they were wearing looks like a fruit bowl, some of them, walking around with a fruit bowl on their head. But that was in vogue at that time. And so we're looking for people who want to get creative and design a hat. Need 7 women's hats. And so that'll be a fun thing. And then the costuming, part of it has to be done too. And then the set design itself, excellence. We're talking about excellence. So, let me just tell you how God provides in advance. So I knew that I needed a pulpit to represent this church. It's a high society church, it's an upscale church, and it has to be a nice pulpit, right? And so I was visiting a friend, and we're walking through his house, and I said, "What's that?" He said, "That's a pulpit." I said, "I know it's a pulpit. What's it doing in your house?" He says, "Well, there was an outfit in town. They were clearing out some of their stuff, and they wanted to know if I wanted a pulpit." I said, "What are you going to do with a pulpit?" He says, "I don't know. I don't know why I took it." I said, "Woohoo! I do. It's going to be a part of our props for In His Steps in April of 2024, April 6th, 2024, at the Holmes Theater." And so there you go. That's the vision. And but the main thing that's going to make this or break this is prayer. And I'm looking for people who are willing to accept a prayer assignment concerning this project, because it's going to need a lot of prayer. And prayer will make a huge, huge difference. And I know there are people out there, if you're not one of them, but you know somebody who does this prayer thing, they're praying all the time, that's the person I'm looking for. And so if you can get me in touch with them, my phone number I think is on the screen. Raina's going to put it on the screen. I want you to call me because it's important. I don't know how to reach out to you. You're going to have to initiate the conversation. But prayer, we're going to have prayer. And prayer makes a difference. A lot of people don't understand that. They say, oh, so you pray you just talk to somebody that's not there? No, we talk to somebody who's there. And he doesn't listen? Yes, he does. He listens. And I could go through all kinds of illustrations for you about how God has answered prayer for me and for multitudes of other kinds of people. You've met them. You've heard about them. You may not believe that happened, but it did. And you'll never change their minds about it because they know. They prayed a specific prayer and they got a specific answer to their prayer. So we're going to pray specific prayers. We're going to pray that God packs out the Holmes Theater. There's not too many events that actually pack out the Holmes Theater. Well, this is going to be one of them. And we're going to plaster this all over the area here. We're going to go a 40-mile radius. We're going to let every community know about this play. It's coming to Detroit Lakes. Don't miss it. And so you're going to want to buy your tickets ahead of time so that we can have a good advance ticket sale. But this is going to make a difference. And I would love to tell you the storyline, but I don't want to ruin it for you. But I'll just give you a teaser. How do I do this without spoiling it? So there's a pastor getting ready to preach, getting his sermon ready to preach. It's a Friday, and all of a sudden there's a knock on his door, and here's this tramp. And the tramp comes in, and the pastor says, "Can I help you?" And he says, "Well, yeah, I'm looking for a job." And the pastor says, "Look, I'm very busy, mister. I'm very busy." And the guy said, "Well, can you at least recommend somebody?" "No, I can't recommend somebody." He's just giving them the cold shoulder. And then the tramp leaves the house, and he says goodbye. And he says, "Oh, 1 Peter 2:21. Pastor says, "What?" 1 Peter 2:21. It's one of my favorite verses. He says, "Well, goodbye." And he leaves. And the pastor says, he gets his Bible out, looks up 1 Peter 2:24, and he reads it. It says, we're supposed to walk in Jesus' steps, walk in his steps. So he prepares his sermon for the next Sunday based on that verse. Well, the next Sunday, this tramp shows up at church. And right in the middle of the pastor's sermon, he stands up, he says, "Excuse me, can I say something?" And he goes into a little narrative, and I'm not going to go through the details of the narrative, but the bottom line is, as he's speaking in front of the church, he drops dead. And all of a sudden, this pastor is plagued with guilt over the shabby way that he treated this guy. And the guy comes in, he says, "You're talking about walk as Jesus walks. What does that mean? How exactly do you do that?" He says, "Well," and the tramp says, "Here's why I'm asking. I've been in this town for 3 days. I beat every door asking for somebody to help me." He says, "I'm not a tramp. I'm not a drunk. I'm not a bum. I lost my job. My wife and my daughter died in a rat-infested tenement in Chicago. And we're not bums. We're people who have had a bad turn in our lives, and we're trying to make it past that. And I get nothing but a door slammed in my face. And you're telling me you're supposed to walk like Jesus walked. What does that mean anyway?" And then he drops dead. Right in the middle of the congregation, right in the middle of the church service. He drops dead. And so then the whole service from that point on, the pastor says to his congregation, "We're going to do some things differently. And I want you to join me in a pledge group. If you are willing to take the next year and say to yourself, I will not make any major decision without first asking, what would Jesus do in this situation? Would he be pleased? with the decision I'm about to make. And then it takes you through the life of a millionaire, a young lady who's inherited millions of dollars, another young lady who's got a very talented voice, another man who publishes a newspaper, another man who runs a railroad. And it takes you through their lives and shows you how that challenge caused them to think through their whole lives differently. And so, Christian watching this program today, if you're a Christian, you want to watch this play. See you April 6th, 2024 at the Holmes Theater, and bring everybody you know. God bless you. We'll be talking more about this in the next year to come. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you.